Namaste, wherever you are in the world, Radhe Radhe. It is my great pleasure and privilege this morning to introduce a new book by a very, very well known spiritual leader, Swami Mukundananda. It's a brand new book. It's not even actually at this moment, as I hold this book, I'm one of the privileged ones who's got to read it even before it has been formally launched. And it's called Questions You Always Wanted to Ask. It's beautifully split up into chapters or sections which deal with sections like faith, is it a good or bad thing, self mastery skills, professional mastery skills, mind management skills, philosophy, suffering, dilemmas, relationship skills, science and spirituality, very important, jnana, bhakti, the practice of sadhana, the forms of God, guru, fears and struggles, wisdom for everyday living, service and giving. These many different sections with several questions under each. And I have to congratulate you, Swamiji. You are a best-selling author already, but I think this is a wonderful book to add to the several other wonderful books that are there by other spiritual leaders on topics like these on our ancient Indian texts and the wisdoms contained in them. I like it very much because I really enjoyed reading it because it is bite-sized. And these are questions that you really all the moment when you're reading them say, yes, I always wondered about that. I always wondered about that. Maybe if somebody is asked to think of a question, we'll not be able to recall it immediately. But when we are reading this, yes, actually, this particular thing I always wondered about. So I think it's actually a sign of your science education to begin with. You went to the IIT and then you went to IIM and management, so you know how to distill stuff into small sections that can, and you're a very good teacher. I think that not everybody is. People may have studied a lot, but they may not be able to convey or articulate what they have learned to others. And I think this book is a testament to both those skills, how to break it down and how to explain complicated. So thank you very much for this book. And we will be talking about
Namaste.
it. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste, Roopa Paiji. Thank you for your kind words. The intention behind the book was to help people clarify their doubts,
Mhm.
because the moment somebody is besieged by a doubt, their spiritual journey kind of gets stalled. I
Yeah.
need to have the answer for this
Yes.
before I can move ahead,
Correct.
and where to get these answers. So I chose questions that are representative of the ones that are in people's minds. And this system of question and answer, spiritual dialectics, is so popular in our Vedic scriptures. So I have
Yes.
just picked on that to present this knowledge in a simple, like you said, in a bite-sized tidbit form.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nicely done. Now, to go into the book itself, you have a section on bhakti, you have a section on Gnana Yoga, and in the Gita, of course, of which you are a master, there is the Krishna says, people come to me by different routes. Some of them choose bhakti yoga, some of them Jnana Yoga, some of them Karma Yoga, some of them Dhyana Yoga, and you must pick according to your nature what is most suited to you. But in your own experience, I'm sure you walked all these paths, all these four paths at different times in your life and when it was needed. What do you feel is perhaps the easiest or the most joyful one, and which is the hardest path to walk of these four yogas?
Yes, Rupa Paiji, this is, I think, a good question to start the discussion with. When I talk about bhakti, I don't refer to mere ceremonies performed in the temple, but the loving connection with God. So the love in the heart that we hold is bhakti. And
Right.
that bhakti is a common thread amongst all the paths. So, for example, while doing our works, when the mind is united with God, it becomes karma plus bhakti, which is karma yoga.
Mm.
And likewise, in the process of Ashtanga Yoga, which Maharishi Patanjali has described, he also refers Samadhi Siddhir Ishvara Pranidhana. To
Mm.
achieve success in
Yeah.
Samadhi, you will need God's grace. So the bhakti is the common spring in all of them. Now, to answer your question in regard to the easiest one. The nature of getting attached, of love, is very essentially a part of being human. And that makes bhakti such a natural process. We have loved in the world, we have loved our family members, we've loved objects, rasgulla, jalebi, etc., and just divert that loving nature to God. And this is what the scriptures also say. Saral sukhad marag yahi bhai, bhagati mori puran shruti gai. This is the saral sukhad marg. And in contrast to this, the difficult path is the path of Gyan Yoga.
Dhyana,
Why? Gyan, knowledge.
knowledge.
Gyan Yoga. Yes. Why? Jnana ke panth kripana ki dhara. The aim out there is to restrain the mind completely, which brings about an unstable situation to achieve the state of thoughtlessness. While in bhakti, we are not trying to make the mind thoughtless, we are making it Krishnamay. Make all your thoughts divine. And
Yeah,
in Gyan, we are trying to restrain the thinking process.
I
That is
see.
why Gyan becomes the difficult path.
Mm.
So there are many other reasons that make bhakti easier than the others, but for now I'll stick myself to this.
Sure. But I find from my own experience and from people I speak to that bhakti is actually very hard in this age when you want to you put jnana over everything on the top of the pyramid. Knowledge, I mean information gathering is treasured or put at a much higher pedestal than just opening yourself up to an experience for something to fill you up, for you to surrender to something seems like, oh my god, I'm not in control. I want to be in control of everything, and therefore I need to gather as much information as I can. But to say that, but it's all his will and or her will is now that we're in Navaratri, we should be saying her will maybe. That seems so difficult for people, and they think that is irrational. So, how does one get over this particular stumbling block?
Yes, yes, you are very right that although bhakti is the easiest, many people perceive it as the most difficult.
Hmm.
And what creates the difficulty is the ego within.
Hmm.
It's that ego that doesn't want to let go.
Hmm.
While the fact is that true jnana, true knowledge, will make us realize that I have so little control. So
Exactly.
Sri Krishna says in the Gita, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. Look, Arjun, somebody who is truly in knowledge will realize the dependence of this tiny soul upon the Supreme Soul and our infinitesimal position in comparison to the infinite creation. So, with that knowledge, will naturally inspire us to surrender and evoke the devotion.
That's
It's
a good.
like, for example,
Huh. Yeah, yeah. Please go on.
like for just to understand the relationship between Gyan and Bhakti, let us say you find a ring and your knowledge is possibly artificial jewelry, must be worth 100 rupees. So your love for the object is to the same extent. It's 100 rupees. And then the goldsmith informs you it's actual gold and it's worth 10,000 rupees. Now that knowledge increases your love
That's a
automatically.
beautiful. Yes, yes,
And
yes.
then if the diamond the jeweler tells you that this diamond here is worth 1 lakh rupees, your love increases even further. So true knowledge automatically grows the love.
That's
So
such a
this is the
beautiful way of
relationship.
putting it. Very nice. Yes, that's so true. So we can be reassured that knowledge will lead us to bhakti at least, even if we don't
Very
approach.
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So Rupa Paiji, let me at this point ask you a question.
Okay.
Your Bhagavad Gita for children was a runaway success, and it created such a tremendous impact in introducing this sacred scripture to the young minds.
Thank
And
you.
all aware Indians really would appreciate the service you have done. So I'd like to ask you that subsequently you wrote the Vedas for children and the Upanishads for children, and your latest book, the Yoga Sutras for children. What prompted you to write this text?
Yeah. So, Swamiji, thank you so much for your kind words. I don't know how I was picked to be this channel to do this, because I have said this in many, many interviews that I wasn't on this path at all. I had never read the Gita or engaged very deeply with it, but it so happened through various choices and consequences that I was brought to this decision, and then I decided to do it. It was very transformative for me. So I fell in love with that whole landscape of the ancient spiritual texts, and then it was a pressing need to find out if the Gita is the distillation of the wisdom of the Upanishads. What might the Upanishads have actually said? And how did Vedavyasa pick some particular aspects of the Upanishads to put in the Gita? What did he leave out? That became a consuming passion to find out. And then during COVID, I heard somebody who was speaking about the Yoga Sutras. For him, it's a lifelong obsession. And I had never been introduced to the Yoga Sutras before. And then when I heard him speak, I said, my God, here is a perfect workbook to accompany the theory texts. And that's how I decided to explore the Yoga Sutras, Swamiji. So, my turn to ask you a question now. And
Yeah.
you point out a very, very important thing in your book, where you say there is sometimes the scriptures seem, intent on confounding us, because they will say something as the reality, and then they will say something entirely contradictory as also a reality. So one of the things that you point out in your book is, in some parts of the scriptures, it says that God, the Hindu version of God or the Indian version of God, is a sort of dispassionate being. He's a Sakshi. He or she or it, Sakshi, that's all. He just watches what happens. He just sets it in motion. Krishna, in fact, says it in the Gita. I set it in motion, and then what happens, I have no control over, and I don't even try to control. It's up to you. It's your actions, and your actions are the actions of your neighbors, the actions of the world that leads you to a particular place. So I have no more interest in it. So a very disinterested observer. That is one version. Somewhere else, it will say that God is the one who in the driver's seat. He steers your chariot. He's the one. So it's very difficult for us regular people to understand which one to believe or which one to get behind, and we need a teacher to explain that seeming dissonance. So how would you explain it?
Yes, Rupaji, the contradiction that you have pointed out is definitely there. In the Gita itself, for example, in one place, Sri Krishna says, Na datte kasya chit papam na chaiva sukritam vibhu. Look, Arjun, I am a non-doer. I am completely dispassionate. I just note your karmas and give the results. And on the other side, in the same Gita, he says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. Look, I am seated in the heart, and from me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So these kind of statements, they create doubts in the people that thing is said here and the complete reverse there.
Yeah.
That is the reason why these scriptures need spiritual preceptors to
Yes.
go into
Yes.
the depth and to
Yes.
reconcile these. So,
Yes.
for example, in the contradiction that you have pointed out, Sri Krishna, or the Supreme, bestows the energy to us by which we can do our acts. But he also endows us with the free will to use that power as we wish. So, for example, he has given us the eyes to see. What we choose to see is a decision we make. Now, when we say that he is steering our life, it doesn't mean that he's taking away our free will. Rather, he's bringing circumstances in our life which will enable us to learn how to use our free will best. The progress on the spiritual path is the ability to use our free will where there's a reason for anger, and yet we choose not to be angry. There's a reason for attachment, but we choose to be detached. There is a reason for pride, but we choose not to be proud. This ability to make the right choices is what progress is about. And that
Mm.
is the basis of the whole Leela of the world, that God has created these souls, given them the abilities to make choices, and is designed the world in such a manner that the souls keep learning, keep growing from lifetime to lifetime until they reach the ultimate perfection that He has designed for them.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful explanation. Because it's true. I mean, it's almost like a video game, right? You get to the next level only by making the choices that will finish off the challenges on the way. You get over those challenges
That's
only
right.
then. You make the right choices there.
Yes.
And I think my favorite part of the Gita is in the end when Arjuna says, "Okay, Vasudeva, I completely trust you. Tell me what to do and I'll do it." Arjuna says, "I'm not going to tell you what to do. That is something that you have to pick. I have given you the choices, I've shown you what will happen. Now it's up to you." And I think that kind of agency to give to man, a philosophy that believes that man has the agency, that he's not just a pawn moved around by some all knowing God, but you have the agency to make your destiny. I think it's a complete opposite of what Hinduism is often thought to be, a fatalistic religion. It's not at
That's
all.
very
In
right.
fact, yeah,
Yes,
you,
because while growing up, we heard 1,000
yeah,
times, बिना भगवान की इच्छा के एक पत्ता भी नहीं हिलता.
yeah,
So we thought that God is controlling everything,
right.
but in that understanding was so wrong and so incomplete.
Yes,
So
incomplete. Yes, yeah. Yeah,
yes, yes.
absolutely. Yes. Another one which have always been curious about, especially if you compare it with other faiths and other origin stories of the universe or of man, in most other religions, or at least Abrahamic religions, it's a creator God concept. But if we and in so most Hindus also think that we have the creator God concept, because very clear, Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, Shiva is the destroyer. So we have a God, a creator God. But if you go back to the Rig Veda, to the Nasadiya Sukta, then that it questions even the existence of an all-knowing creator God. So the whole uh, the what it urges us to do is to question even that, like there are no sacred cows, you have to question everything and come to your own understanding. What is this dissonance? Why did we come from that to that? Or is there any?
I think what is happening out here is the interpretations people are making of it.
Yes.
Now, we do have Brahma as the creator God, but that Brahma is asked by Narad in the
Mhm.
Bhagavatam that, Father, you are known as the creator. Do you make the world by your own powers, or is there some source behind
Ah,
you as well?
ah,
And he responds, Rijami Anniyuktoham Haro Harati Tadvashaha Vishwam Purusha Rupena Paripati Trishakti Dhrik. He says, Narad, pointed by him, I, Brahma, create the world,
I
and
see.
Shankar annihilates it. So
Yeah.
he is admitting there that he is receiving power from someone else. Now the question arises that the source, the ultimate source, the supreme divine personality, is that source creating the world?
Ah. Mm.
This word for creation in our
Mm.
scriptures
Mm.
is srishti,
Mm.
which is coming from the root srij.
Mm.
And this root srij does not mean to make something new, but
Ah.
to simply release. Like, for
Oh.
example, you catch a fly in your hand,
Uh-huh.
and then you say, look, friends, I'm going to make a fly. And people say, come on, sure. You open your palm and it flies up. So everybody says, look, don't con us. You had captured it earlier on.
Uh,
Likewise, at the time of Mahapralay, that Supreme had absorbed all of creation within himself. And when he engaged in the cycle of creation, he released it. And then he again absorbs it within himself and then again releases it. So this cycle of Srishti, Sthiti, Pralay goes on and on and on. So which means before the present creation, there was dissolution. Before that, there was again creation. Before that, again dissolution. Okay, you say, did the cycle begin at a particular point in time? And the
mm.
Vedas say no.
Yeah.
It is going on since eternity, just as
Uh,
God Himself is eternal.
mm.
So, if because the energies are ever since the energetic has existed, so Maya has existed ever since God has existed, and the cycle is also going on ad infinitum. Now,
Mhm.
when God creates the world, in one sense, he is the creator because he is the ultimate source of the powerhouse for everything that is happening. But from another sense, he is also the non doer. So, for
Mm.
example, in the Bhagavad Gita again, Sri Krishna says, Maya dhyakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam. Look, Arjun, I am governing the material energy and it is creating this world. So we can say he's the non-doer or we can say he is the doer. Both these statements are right. Contradictions, the apparent contradictions in our Vedic scriptures are because the concept of God is so subtle.
Correct.
Now,
Yes.
as the knowledge becomes subtler, its branches increase.
Yeah.
And now coming to the Nasadiya Sutra, of course, this could be answered in so many ways. But just to shed a little more light on it, when the process of creation happens, it all starts from the primordial form of the material energy, which is Prakriti. And that unfolds into Mahan, which further unfolds into Tanmatra, the five uh, perceptions, touch, taste, smell, etc. And then the first gross element manifests, which is Akash or sky. From that come the others. So in the beginning, there was nothing. What it is saying is very correct. Now, people can interpret it to mean there is no God. But if we look at it from a bigger picture, it is not denying the existence of God.
Yeah.
In fact, in the Bhagavatam, Brahmaji himself, when he was born on the lotus, and he looked around, he couldn't figure out anything. Just like the Nasadiya Sutra, he says, where am I? What am I doing? And then he saw this lotus and he started entering this stem of the lotus. He went on and on for thousands of years. Sahasravarsha Sahasrante. He did not come to the end of it. So he retraced his steps. And then he sat on the lotus and the ocean of energy that was around him, he
Mm.
heard the waves and they were creating the sound tapa, tapa, perform austerities. That was when Brahma sat and did tapasya. And at the
Okay.
end of it, Narayan manifested and he gave him the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. In
Mm.
4 verses, he gave knowledge on the basis of which Brahma created the world. So the first verse is very interesting. He says, Ahameva samevagre nanyadyat sadasat param paschadaham yadetacha yova shishyeta sosmiham. Look, Brahmaji, everything that exists is veritably my form.
Mhm.
And where creation ceases to exist, beyond that, I am there. When there was no creation, I alone existed. And when creation dissolves, I alone will remain. There's nothing apart from me. With this knowledge, Brahma, now you go and create. Rupaji, let me now take this opportunity to learn some of your experience in researching for the Yoga Sutras. What were some of the interesting things you discovered in this journey?
First of all, I think I've been practicing yoga for a while. I mean, the physical asana part of the yoga, and some pranayama, of course, which is part of that pranayama. But I didn't know that for me, I'm interested in these little trivia kind of things also. That the word asana is mentioned only 3 times in the whole Yoga Sutras. That was very surprising to me. One would assume that when you say yoga, I sort of automatically assume it's about asanas. I mean, we know that it's supposed to be a link between body and mind and everything, but for it to be such a tiny part of the Yoga Sutras, which themselves are so small. The Yoga Sutras themselves are only 196 sutras, very small, even compared to the Bhagavad Gita, so small. And then you say that, then what is it about? I mean, what did Maharishi Patanjali talking about in the rest of the sutras? So that was the interesting thing. And then to find that, Ashtanga comes from the Yoga Sutras, it's not just a form of yoga. So, it's almost like, okay, this is Ashtanga Yoga, this is Bihar School of Yoga, sometimes we do Hatha Yoga, and you think it's all physical. And then you say, no, this is a completely philosophical, spiritual discipline and huge mental strength and willpower and those kinds of things to access the deepest recesses of the human psyche and find out how limitless it is and how powerful. And that really just blew my mind. I had no idea that that was what it was about. And I thought to myself, my God, if I'm coming to it at the age of 50, imagine if children were introduced to it when they were much younger, to the concept that we are using only a tiny part of your mind, and it is possible to do much more with your mind if you know to train it. And here's the workbook, here are the practical exercises, this is how you should train yourself, how much they could benefit. So those were some of my aha moments while researching for the Yoga Sutras.
Very nice,
Which-
wonderful. Yes, those very, very important, very relevant discoveries that Maharishi Patanjali he has gone so deep into the workings of the mind and the system of
yes,
beliefs, etc. It's a
yeah.
huge ocean there of self-mastery and self-discovery. So, Rupaji, with your talent, you have uh, made it accessible to the children, which is a tremendous service to them.
Thank you. But which brings me to a point that you have discussed in the book, and we all know. I think anybody who has tried to maintain, to stick to a diet or stick to a fitness regimen, we know that it's the hardest thing in the world for a human being to cultivate is discipline. This, yeah, and the thing is, whether you want material rewards, whether you want spiritual rewards, emotional, whatever rewards you want, discipline is at the base of it. Particularly, I think actually everything, even material rewards, even the rich people, people who are self-made rich people or self-made powerful people, they have all practiced a huge amount of discipline in their lives. And given that it's the hardest thing, and given that it's of interest to you because you have also talked about it in the book, how should one begin on this journey of cultivating discipline?
Uh, Absolutely, the self-discipline is like the crowning virtue of our personality because everything that is worthwhile is always upstream, and reaching there requires making consistent choices where we deny pleasurable things which are of low value and repeatedly make hard choices because they are of high value. So
Yes.
this requires, I think we can split it up into two parts. The first is willpower and the second is why power.
Is what
So
power?
why, W-H-Y,
Why power? Okay, okay.
W-H-Y, why power. So the
Right.
willpower is like a mental muscle, just
Yeah.
as we have the physical muscles, and these muscles grow as we exert them. Now, and those who visit the gym are well aware of the process where you exert till the point that the muscle breaks. It's called micro tears. But there's nothing to worry about because if they are taking sufficient nutrition, in 48 hours it joins back and becomes stronger than before. That is how the physical muscles grow. Likewise is the muscle of willpower has to be grown one strand at a time by exercising it. So we
Mm.
should always bear in mind every time we know what is right, but we make an inferior choice, we weaken our willpower muscle one little bit. And every time we make the difficult choice, we exert our self control, we grow in self discipline one little bit. So we must make a strong resolve and repeatedly exercise it. And there is no limit to which we can grow the ability for self control because ultimately it is control over the mind and the senses. And
Yeah.
there is the possibility of completely subduing the mind, where the
Yeah.
mind becomes the servant. See, the
Mm.
mind, we have given it lift and it is now so high, says, I am going to decide the mood. And self
Yeah.
control means to deny the mind, to
Yeah.
do the reverse of what the mind says and what the senses say. To keep
Yeah.
exerting, and out here, the why power is also very important. This comes by exerting the intellect. So
Yeah.
beyond the mind is the intellect.
Right.
And Sri Krishna says, Arjun, buddhi yogmupashritya machittah satatam bhava. What I am telling you, Arjun, is not karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga. It is buddhi yoga. And say, oh my God, there's another yoga. Says what?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
he means is you have to empower your intellect with wisdom. Realize why something is valuable. Create a higher sense of purpose in yourself. And
Yeah.
then with the power of the intellect, you control the mind and the senses. Every
Right.
human being has got that power. They are not realizing it.
That's what.
Have you ever heard of people who vent their anger upon their boss? It's
Yeah.
literally unheard of. Because no matter how bad they may be feeling, the intellect says, look, you lose your job, just control yourself.
Yeah.
So the anger keeps flowing below, right? That's because of the God has empowered the human intellect with the ability to control the mind and the senses if it so decides. And
Yeah.
we have to unleash that potential by illuminating the intellect with wisdom.
Yeah. And that you've given me a very nice segue into my next question. Relationships with boss and employee is a certain kind of relationship where definitely the power resides in the boss's hands. So we can, our intellect immediately tells us how to behave, because it would be self-preservation. It's dangerous for you to exert to say what you're feeling. But how come this we are not able to exercise in our closest relationships, in the people we love the most? We feel, we can, it's almost like a, even however much discipline you exercise and say no, I must not say, because in the end it is damaging to me, even though it may not be immediately obvious, like I won't get fired from my job, but in the end it's damaging to the relationship and therefore damaging to me. how are we not able to control ourselves in that situation? Are we, because we're so sure we'll be forgiven, we'll get away with it, it won't have any lasting impact. How do we train ourselves to maintain discipline in those situations?
Yes, Rupaji, the reason why we are losing control in our close relationships is the attachment. The attachment is leading
Ah,
to expectations. And
ah,
expectations are the reasons for frustrations. As somebody said, that expectations are premeditated frustrations. So these expectations of ours are the reason why we are becoming upset. For example, if you expect that your near and dear one should be perfect, now nobody is perfect in this world, and you are expecting that my child should not have these defects. And that expectation is leading to the frustration. The second
yeah,
is expecting that they should do what I want them to do.
yeah,
Now, they are
yeah,
all human beings. They all have their sanskars of so many lives. They are on their own journey. But our
yeah,
expectation has led to the anxiety within ourselves. The
yeah.
third is the expectation that they should think as I think. If I have these set of likes and dislikes, they should have similar likes and dislikes.
Hmm.
The fourth, sometimes people go to the extent of thinking that my family members should be mind readers. So, for example, it was the wife's birthday, and the husband came home with a present and gifted it to the wife. Oh, darling, congratulations, best wishes on your birthday. And the wife had a terrible mood. The husband was perplexed. When I've given her such a wonderful gift, what is she upset about? But she expected that he will take me out for dinner and he should have the ability to read my mind. Now, the husband is not a mind reader, but it's an
Yeah,
expectation. And
yeah,
then, behind all of these expectations is our selfishness. We are loving others for our sake. Now,
yeah,
if we can turn that around and bring more of a service attitude, so the service attitude helps us stand back from the relationship and see people as they are. They are also on their journey of endless lifetimes. And if we have
yeah.
been brought together, let me look at myself as a facilitator on their path. So we then
Right,
free ourselves from expectations and are able
right.
to bear with people's infirmities.
Yeah, that's a beautiful
So,
answer. Beautiful. Yeah,
Rupaji, let me now tap a little further into your journey in writing the Yoga Sutras for the children, which is so intriguing because a book that is like the PhD of PhDs in mind management and the inner journey, you have put it in a form that children will relish it and appreciate it. So do share with me and our viewers what is your favorite part of the Yoga Sutras that you now like to incorporate in your daily?
yeah. So let's see. Basically, what was the first four verses set the tone for the rest of the text. So they tell you that basically Patanjali is saying, Maharishi is saying, you have to calm your mind. First, he says, what is yoga? Yoga is the stilling of the churnings of the mind. Okay. Then the natural question that follows is, why should I do it? What benefit is it to me? Like following on from what you said, our own self interest always comes first to us. So we are asking, okay, so I'll still the mind. How is it useful to me? And he says, only then will you see yourself as you really are. And then the next question will be, really? Then what do I see myself as otherwise? You mean I'm not looking at seeing myself as I really am? And he says, no, you are seeing yourself as the churnings of your mind. And then the rest of the text, he explains it. So the core message I got was that, okay, you have to still your mind. It's very useful. Now, how to still your mind? And the Indian texts never tell you do this, don't do that. They are not prescriptive. They are allowing you, they're just showing you many paths and many ways to get at the truth. There, the incentive is that there is a supreme truth that you can get to. That's all. That's the incentive. And then you're encouraged to follow your own path, your own journey. So it's not prescriptive. Then how to calm your mind. And my favorite part was those four things he sets out in the very first section, the Samadhi Pada. He says, cultivate these four things: Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. Four things: Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. And he said, don't do it for brownie points or to be loved or be popular. Do it because all of them lead to the calming of the mind. And you never think of cultivating friendship with good people, a satsang, as something that calms your mind. You're like, when you think of a group of friends, you're like, yeah, and then we go and have fun and we have so much chatter, especially women, when we get together with our women friends, there's so much to share, so much to talk. So you don't think of it as a calming your mind activity. But if you think, when am I at my calmest? When I'm surrounded by people who I know will not judge me, they see me as I truly am, and they will only facilitate and enable me, and they're not here to. Then the mind's alertness goes down. You don't have to be on high alert. What does this person mean? What does she actually saying? What does she actually want? Is she telling the truth? All those questions go away from the mind. So the churning stops, and then you're in a calm place. So that's true. I never realized that just being among friends calms you, not excites you. Excites you in a different way, in joy. Then karuna, that's another beautiful, again coming from forgiveness. Just have compassion for the people who are not like you, or perhaps seem to you at this moment to be following a path that is ruinous for them. Try to tell them, advise them in your way. But if they are not following, if they are determined to go down that path, then don't hate them, don't be angry with them. Instead, practice compassion. Very Jesus like, forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do. That kind of, just cultivate the spirit of forgiveness. Then mudita, what a beautiful quality, to take joy in the joy of others. How few of us do it. And especially when it's our closest friends, we feel more resentment when they succeed or whatever, than if some other random person in the world succeeds. We are all there to, yes, 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 go for it. He's Indian, he's from Karnataka, she's from here, But if it's somebody very close to us who perhaps has been on the same path, our work colleagues or whatever, and they succeed, then it's a problem to be mudita, to take pleasure in that. So if we can practice that, the moment you start practicing that, I'm happy for you, immediately the thoughts calm down. Otherwise, you're like, he shouldn't have got it, she shouldn't have got the promotion. How did she get it? I must have been doing this kind of thing behind my back. Must have, all these which churn up your mind. And then upeksha, dispassion towards those who are unkind to you, or who seem to be have something against you. Again, just don't take it to heart and let it. What a beautiful. So sorry I took so long to say this, but these are the four things that I really
Very
loved
nice, very
about
nice.
the yoga sutras. Mm.
Wonderful, Roopa ji. Yes, there's a wonderful takeaways from just one particular sutra. And
Yeah,
there's so 196 sutras. My God, what a
yeah,
treasure chest.
yeah, yeah. And coming to forgiveness again, Swamiji, you talk about forgiveness in your book. And there's a very pertinent question that you have introduced, saying that how do I know, how do I forgive? How do I train myself to forgive? Especially when maybe my life has changed course because of someone's action. And you say I should still forgive them. So how do I forgive? And then how do I know for sure that I have forgiven them? That question was actually key, very critical. How do I know
Mm.
that I have forgiven them? Because the mind plays such tricks on us. We can be telling, no, I forgive long back. But how do we know for sure? What's the litmus test to know that we have truly
Yeah,
forgiven someone?
absolutely, yes. Forgiveness is an essential life skill for everyone. The
Mm,
reason is this world is made up of Maya-dhin souls, souls who are in Maya. They've got anger, greed, desire, selfishness, and it's only natural that people may have behaved roughly with us. hurt us, been unjust to us, snatched away our dues, etc. In so many ways, created emotional wounds. And when that happens, we feel resentment. But that resentment hurts us far more than anything else. It's like holding acid within our hearts. And forgiveness is a gift that we are offering not to the other person, to our own selves. So, spiritual wisdom requires coming to this understanding that I need to release the past, which is spinning me down. And I
Mm.
just need to let go to start moving ahead and realizing the potential of my life. It becomes easier when we become more accepting of people for what they are. We all know that we are an ocean of defects for ourselves. I mean, we've got so many defects. We're far from perfection. Why are we holding others to such a high standard of perfection? If somebody behaved selfishly, it is only to be expected. If you go to a hospital, you will not be surprised why there are sick people here because you are in the hospital. So when we are in this world of Maya, we've got Maya these roles. They are selfish. Why be so upset? Now, what the saints do is they utilize these hurts as opportunities for progress. So it's one of the finest ways to progress. If somebody is insulting of you and you can learn to bear that without allowing bitterness to come in your heart, you are just overcoming your lower self. And that is
Yeah.
why the famous verse, Ninda Kaniyare Rakhiye Angan Kuti Chavai, Saint Kabir says that look, keep a critic in your house. Let that person hurl all kinds of hurtful insults upon you. You bear it with a smile. And he guarantees you, without soap and water, you'll cleanse your heart. So, saints, because their value system is different, they say that in my value system, emotional comfort is not the top priority. Inner growth is the priority. So if it requires bearing hurts, I shall gladly embrace them. And they transform those hurts into opportunities for progress. So
Mm.
these are a few of the tips for overcoming hurts and forgiveness. Now, how to know that we have forgiven?
Yeah.
When the memory of that past episode does not give rise to bitterness from within. That is the acid test that we have now truly released that. It requires tremendous maturity. It
Yes.
requires the ability for positive thinking, where you say, look, I will only harbor such thoughts in my heart which are beneficial to me. And there is no benefit in keeping this resentment. So just let go. It doesn't matter whether he deserved to be punished, did not deserve to be punished. I leave it all in the hands of God. And from
Right.
my side, I will just focus on my own positivity, my own keeping noble and sublime thoughts in my heart.
Yeah. That is also a very selfish thing, in fact. You can think of it as a, I'm doing it for my betterment in that sense. It's a positive selfishness, I think.
That's
Yeah.
right. There is the selfish, everybody is.
Yeah.
But those who realize where is the true self-interest, their life becomes blessed.
Correct.
Hence,
Correct.
Tulsidas
That's,
writes in the Ramayana,
yeah.
he says, Swaratha Sanchu. Swarat means the self-interest. Swaratha Sanchu Jivakaha Eha Man Karma Vachana Ram Padaneha. The real self-interest of the soul is developing loving attachment of the mind at the lotus feet of Sri Ram.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And the other question which you bring up, very important, is the difference between religion and spirituality in your book. You have a section on science and spirituality also. But I thought this question on religion and spirituality was very interesting because it's become something that people talk about very casually nowadays. I'm not religious at all, but I'm very spiritual. I was like, okay, so what does that mean when you say I'm not religious? I'm not religious means I don't believe in any particular God. I don't do all these rituals, these blind rituals. There's no blind faith. I'm only trying to be a spiritual person, and I don't know what that means. But they may also not be able to articulate it very well. But somehow, religion has become a bad word, and doing rituals, particularly ritualistic, any kind of ritual is supposed to be a bad thing. And my thing always is that we are all doing some ritual or the other all the time, every day. Only these particular rituals people have a problem with because their parents have done it, and then the association is parents, grandparents are fuddy-duddy, not in touch with the modern world, not scientific, and we are also. That's why somebody like you, who has moved from a very rational education, which is based on reason entirely and empirical, processes to get to the truth, whatever that truth may be of the external world. How did you move to this, to spirituality? And then, in your opinion, are rituals really to be discarded? Because half the Vedas is about ritual. It's about how to do the ritual. And Vedavyasa chose to keep that part. He didn't discard it. Even when he came up with the Jnanakanda, even when he put the Upanishad there, he didn't discard the earlier part. So, what is the relationship between the two? How important are the two?
Uh, yes, Rupaji, every religion in the world has these two aspects to it. One is the traditions, the rites, the ceremonies, the cultural milieu and background. And the other is the inner journey of self-purification, unfoldment of our inner divinity, and upliftment of our soul. So naturally, the spirituality is the core of it. But spirituality is so subtle that
Yeah,
when we wish to propagate something to the masses, it has to be housed in traditions, in processes, in ceremonies. So, for example, if you ask people, sit down and meditate on God, very few people will succeed in doing it. But if
yeah,
you say, come, let's all do RP, you
yeah.
have so many who can do it together. And in the process, they are also inculcating spirituality because they're thinking of God, they're creating those sentiments. So
Right. And it
I
brings in
think
the community also. Like it's a community thing to do it with other people. That's sort of
that's
comforting. Yeah.
absolutely, it involves the entire community, whereas
Yeah.
spirituality becomes just an internal journey. And how do you pass on these values to the next generation? Now we can say, okay, I am SBNR, spiritual but not religious. That's the latest acronym.
Is
Now,
it? Okay.
so SBNR. You tell them, okay, that's great. But when you become a mother or father and you wish to inculcate values in your children and pass on some traditions, how will you do it? You will need some processes they can connect with. Now, one doctor in the United States, he said to me, Swamiji, when my children were young, I used to take them to the children's classes, the Bal Vihar, so that they get some education in Indian values, etc. And they used to hate it. But when they grew up and they have children, now they are taking their children to the same classes. So we do realize that to pass on these to the next generation, you have to give some processes that the children can connect with. And
Yeah,
that is where rituals, tradition, and ceremonies have such an important role to play.
yeah,
Having said that, there is always the danger in the rituals
correct.
that they are elevated to such an extent that they become an end in themselves.
Right,
And the reason why they are being performed becomes sidelined.
right,
That danger our scriptures are warning against. And they are repeatedly telling us that understand the purpose of the ritual is
right.
cultivation of love for God. So, for example, in the Bhagavatam, Ved Vyas says, Vasudeva para Veda, Vasudeva para Makha, Vasudeva para Yoga, Vasudeva para Kriya. The goal of all the Karma Kand is to help you develop love at the lotus feet of Vasudeva. So the rituals are not wrong, but they need the purpose behind the rituals must be understood and not sidelined. Okay, Rupa ji, now I would like to hear from you as the master writer of children's books, particularly scriptural books for children. What is your message? How can children benefit, in particular, from the wisdom of Maharishi Patanjali's Yoga Sutras?
Yeah. So, like I already mentioned, starting young is such a good way to cultivate a habit. And the habits that he has prescribed are wonderful for stilling the mind and for generally focusing, which they will need even in their academics, which is an obsession with Indian parents. So with Indians in general, very to be very good at academics, for that you need a focused mind. For that, so even if you take self-interest, in that kind of self-interest, very very immediate self-interest, getting good marks, it's a great way to still your mind. However, um, basically, and it's a habit, like Maharishi also says, and I'm sure in so many other scriptures they say it's about abhyasa. Anything, even good behavior, is about doing it over and over and over again. So the more you do this over and over again, cultivation of stillness of the
Sir
mind, the
to
better.
Sir to Sir to Dirghakal
Dirgha
Nairantarya Satkara Seveto Dridh Bhumi. That's
Dridha
the
Bhumi. I love
key.
that. That is
Yeah,
the
the
firm
Abhyas
base.
creates the Dridh Bhumi.
Zero movie, yeah. So that is great. But the other thing I love about the Yoga Sutras for children, for how it can relate to children, is that the Yama Niyama, the first two rungs, are probably the closest thing we have to commandments in the sense of tell the truth, do not steal, don't be greedy, don't covet what somebody else has. All that is contained in that, and then cleanliness of the mind, non-violence, all that, which otherwise we don't have like as an instruction anywhere else. So this is good, but again, it's not the incentive for being telling the truth and all is not to get a place in heaven, because that again drives it in the area of the irrational, and children might shy away from that. Oh, what does that mean? It may not. But here it says all this telling the truth. Why should you tell the truth? So that your mind will be calm. That is the only goal. And I love that approach, that if you tell lies, you'll have to remember what lies you told to how many people, and it's just more annoying and it doesn't calm your mind. Tell the truth, then you won't have to remember anything. Just tell the truth. So as a that is very logical, very rational. Anyone understands that immediately. So once you convince them that you have to aim for a calm mind, these are the ways. Tell the truth, you have a calmer mind. Do not steal. There's no guilt. There's no looking over your shoulder at who has caught me. Then you have a calmer mind. Then you cultivate the company of good people. You have a calmer mind. It's such simple, beautiful things. If children can be taught in this way, without like the threat of a carrot or a stick, just for your own sake, do it. It's just, I love that approach. And that's why I think children will benefit a lot from this, Swamiji.
Very nice. Yes, that would be a very appealing way to present it to the children that you want a calm mind, you want a pure mind. Everybody realizes that they want a calm mind, a pure mind, and the yam and niyam are just perfect injunctions to help you achieve that. Very nice. Thank you for that insight,
Thank you.
Rupesh.
Thank you. I can't imagine that I'm giving you insights, but I'm sure, hopefully, maybe, this is just what I have got out of it. And I thought because of my profession as a writer for children, it would appeal to children. I think I have some insights on how to present information to children. And this to me seemed like what a perfect thing. I'd like to end, Swamiji, with one last question to you about
Yeah.
reincarnation, okay, which again you have mentioned in the book. Again, I thought again that approach was when we were talking about how to logically explain stuff, and this is you have logically explained that reincarnation has to be uh, it's a logical theory because of how babies behave in the few hours after they're born, the couple of months after they're born, when they haven't experienced the world. They have no reasons to be happy or sad, really, unless very animal reasons like I'm hungry, so I'm upset, or I'm uncomfortable. And yet, you find children, babies, showing expressions and things that you wonder where is that coming from. They can't even see clearly they can't even absorb what is around them, and yet it seems like they're dwelling in their minds and deriving some pleasure from it or some unhappiness from it. So how do you this is again the thing is that all Indic religions mostly and Eastern religions believe in this, whereas many other religions believe only in one life and the end. So what is your take? How what do you think is the
Yes,
what are the benefits of thinking of our lives as being not one
yeah.
but several?
When we don't accept the concept of rebirth, it becomes extremely difficult to explain why people are born handicapped, why there is
Correct.
so
Correct.
much of difference from birth itself. One person is born with the proverbial golden spoon in the mouth, and one person is born in a drunkard's family where just getting to live is a struggle. So the world becomes irrational, and the idea of a just God becomes a little difficult to digest. So
Correct.
coming from our Vedic perspective, we have a more logical perspective of creation, where you are deciding your destiny by your actions of this life and past life. And that, first of all, enables us to take responsibility in our life for where we are. Wherever I am today, now I cannot blame my parents. I cannot blame anybody else. It's the consequence of
Right.
my actions. Right? And along with that comes the ability to decide our future. And now I know that my actions determine my destiny. And if I made my destiny by past actions, and I want my future to be different, I have to do different things in the present. So it puts us in the driver's seat. The control is in our
Yes.
hands.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So
Beautiful.
the Vedas, the Vedic scriptures, they explain that the soul is enmeshed in three bodies. One is the gross body that we are all aware of, and the second is the subtle body, which includes the mind, the intellect, and the ego, apart from 15 other elements. And the third is the causal body, the Karan Shari. So, what we call death is the soul only rejecting the gross body. And the gross body is no longer functional, inhabitable house for the soul. So, it rejects it and goes on. But two bodies are going along with it. And that is explaining the behavior of the child in infancy. So Nyaya Darshan says, Jatasya harsha shoka bhaya sampratipatah. It says, as giving as the proof of reincarnation. Look, that little child, for no reason, is experiencing fear, exhilaration, despondency. It says, look, those memories are still there in the subtle body. And then the images of this life fall so strongly that it starts getting erased. It's like, let's say, in a dark room, you're watching projection, and the sunlight floods in by opening the windows. So now what you were watching on the wall from the projector gets kind of erased. And that's what happens, and that's how we start forgetting. So it's so logical and scientific where it immediately appeals to our common sense.
That's right. That's absolutely right. I think that's the instant appeal of our texts because it appeals to the rational mind. It's not asking you to believe anything. It's asking you to look. I'm pointing it out to you, see it, and then difficult for the mind to reject because we are creatures of reason. We need
Yes.
proofs. We need we need analysis. So thank you so much, Swamiji. This was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for saying all those lovely things about my books, and thank you for enlightening us on so many different aspects. I mean, and I must tell the viewers that this is only a small part of what is there in this book. There is so much more to explore, to enjoy, to discover. So please, I think everyone should get a copy. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Rupa ji. It was such a pleasure conversing with you today. To have the opportunity to discuss my book and also get some revelations and to learn from your experiences in your journey through the Yoga Sutras. It was
Thank you.
really a wonderful opportunity to discuss with you.